Okay, hello everybody. I hope you all can hear me. If that's the case, maybe write a quick little yes into our chat today. I'm actually very excited to give you my first online painting class with PaintEvents. So let's hope it's all gonna go well today. And we today, for me, this is the unofficial paint like Bob Ross painting class, since we paint something which could really be a painting by Bob Ross, and we will really use some techniques that Bob Ross is using as well. So I see we already have some people writing. Yeah, perfect. Okay, so I see you can all hear me. I think before we start painting, we need to go through our material that we're going to use today. Um, Because since I don't know, maybe some of you have our Flurry Art starter set that you could get over our page, or I think also quite some attendees are maybe using their personal colors. So quickly, what you see here and what I will paint today is, maybe let's switch the screen so you can see it better. So I have here 5 brushes. I am not going to use all of them, since in my opinion, it's the less you use, the better it is. It's very easy to get confused if you have so many brushes. So for sure, I will use the biggest. I will maybe use these two, or let's say these. And I'm not sure yet, probably I won't even use that, but just in case I will keep that one. That's for the brushes. I hope you can all see them, but of course, like with painting, is you can also do a painting with only one brush. We need a pencil. It's only for a short time that we're gonna use. And you see here, I already have my colors, my basic starter colors. Basically, if you don't have the same ones, what is good if you have some sort of yellow, some sort of red, some sort of blue, a black, and a white. That should keep you equipped for everything that we're gonna do today. What else we need? I have here this plate. I'm probably going to use it for mixing colors. And what I'm also going to use it for is to make our moon. If you look at my first painting, the moon is actually the exact size of my plates. I'm using that as a form so I can make a nice round shape. But of course, you can also make a smaller moon. I mean, you can also use this one. If you want it a little smaller, just don't, of course, don't turn it upside down, or you will have a impressionistic start or a very modern arty start. And what we also use, if you have commanded the starter set, you will have a few of these wooden pieces. Now, for those who don't know what they are for, actually, like if you have a canvas, after some times the canvas material can get a little loose. And if that happens, you put these into the corner. You can kind of like put them in, and like that, your canvas will be a little more straight. It won't bend as much, but normally you only use these after some years. But today you also are going to use this for painting or as an alternative for the people who are well equipped. You can also use this kind of spatula. Okay, and of course we also use a cup of water, and right now you can't see it, but what I have next to me is a paper towel, like kitchen paper, or if you don't have that, you can also use toilet paper. You can use some toilet paper of the enormous stash that you probably bought in our Corona time. Maybe you want to start getting rid of that stuff now. And yeah, I think looking into the chats, I see ready people. So I think it's time to start. But maybe before we start, since we had some problems with our art supplier that they couldn't send or they didn't have like too many canvas sizes, maybe a quick question for you. What size of canvas do you have? At the moment, this is 40 times 30, but it's possible that there's quite some people who have 40 times 40, so they basically have a square canvas. Can you maybe let me know if that's the case so I can explain to you a little bit what would be good changes in like your composition so you still get a nice looking painting. Because of course if you only have a square like that and you do the moon this big, then you won't have any space for our beautiful waterfall. Okay, so I see 30 times 20, 40 times 50. That's not a bad thing. I mean, like the ratio is almost the same as 40 times 30. So yeah, basically if you just hold your canvas upright, you should manage just well. But in case you have a square canvas, I kind of try to place that down. Maybe if your canvas looks about so. I think what you need to be careful then is that your moon is going to be quite a bit smaller. And probably some of you already heard of the golden ratio. Especially in landscape painting, this is something a painter really has an eye on. So when we paint, we want a ratio which is more or less like 2/3, 1/3, or three-fourths, 1/4. So if I do a moon on a square canvas, it will be probably less smaller, maybe like the less bigger, a little bit smaller, so it might be that size on here, because like that you have enough space to kind of start with your trees up here, and then you still have enough space to kind of do the lake and the waterfall down there. But we can also like check that on the go. So very nice. And yeah, now it's time for me to switch to my empty canvas. And maybe I place this here so I can cheat a little. And yeah, you still see the more or less finished version in the corner. Or if you want to see the finished version, you can always tell me and I will show you. So first of all, we grab our pencil and we are going to try out like our composition in a very, very simple way. So first of all, I just talked about the golden ratio. We're also gonna do that in our composition. So where I have the horizon line should be about, I have like 2/3 until like 3/4 part which will be occupied by the sky, and 1/3 to 1/4 which will occupy the lower part. So basically I kind of like try to measure it by eye because we don't need to measure it out exactly, but and then what I will do is create a line here which will help me as my first guideline, so I know where my sky will be about. And then second of all, we can already use our plate for our moon. I think I will use the same size of moon. And now if I look at that part which might be almost a square, my moon should be kind of in one corner. I think if we do the moon in the middle, that won't really be an interesting composition. We want it a little bit on the side, so right about here. And I hold my plate down, and then I can just trace the line with my pencil. Here we go. And if it worked out, you should see it. For you, it's probably hard to see but if I hold it a little bit closer, you can see the lines. Try not to press super hard. If you press super hard, it will get more difficult to cover your pencil with the colors. I will give you a few moments to maybe finish yours, and maybe if you're ready to start painting, give me a quick yes so we can start. By the way, let's see if I have any people I know. I already see Jacqueline, special hello to you. And now in the meantime, when I'm waiting for your yes, I already start whitening my brush a little bit. Okay, perfect. So right now, what we are going to start with is the texture of the moon. So we're not coloring it yet. We're just giving it a little bit of texture. And basically how we want to do that is with the same color as our sky, so a dark blue. But what is important right now is that we have quite some color on our brush because we don't want a super thick layer. So as I said, take a little bit of water onto your brush and then take only a little bit of black. Black is a very strong color. Always be careful with black. If you mix something with black, you only need a tiny bit to make it darker. And I will take some blue. Here in this case, I can take some more black since it's a little bit bright, maybe even a little bit more. But what I have now is, or what I want now is a really watery solution. So what I have now, you see those beautiful dark strokes of color. I want it really watery so that when I'm holding my plate like not straight, you can really see that the color starts running down. So really watery solution. And now what I'm doing, and here you already have to be careful to not make your first mess. What I'm doing is I'm holding my brush over my moon and I will start tapping it. And you'll see if you really have that watery solution, you will create sprinkles. And I can even like take some more water and really like create some random spots, not too many. I'm taking more water and I'm sort of really like creating drips of water. And you can here also, you can let them run around a little bit. Just be careful that they don't run outside too much, so you don't have everything already full of color. Bit like so. So you can already like get a little bit messy, get a little bit chaotic. And now maybe you're asking, why am I doing that? If I want to create a red and a yellow moon or an orange moon. Because what I'm doing right now is I'm already using my paper towel and I'm pressing it not too strong, but I firmly press it down on my painting. And if you really used a watery solution, you will see that your paper towel is really soaking up that color. So you only have like sort of a very gentle layer of color left on your moon. And the good thing is, since that is quite a dark color already, once we paint over that layer, you can still see those points and they will appear like they're the craters of the moon and the little irregularities. Also getting rid of that. You see, you can make it disappear almost completely. Hey Patrick, how's it going? And now in case that you haven't used enough water, if you have a really like strong base of color, you can always just take some pure water and water it down on the painting. Just so you know. And when I'm done with that, I want to dry my brush. And I also want to, of course, use the quick moment where I'm waiting until you finish your part to say, even though I'm speaking of English with you, just to make it possible for all English viewers to follow our class. Of course, you can always ask questions in German or even in Swiss German, and I can answer them in German. Or if you don't understand something that I'm saying, I gladly repeat it in German for you. So that being said, I think right now, since I already made a big mess in my plate, I will also use my paper towel for my plate to kind of soak up the color a little bit so it doesn't go everywhere. Very nice. Okay, so next up, washing out my brush. I'm drying it. And now it's time for our moon, actually. And you see, like, our moon is basically a gradient from a yellow on the right-hand side to a red on the left-hand side. Now, since today I'm using magenta, which is a bit a different tone of color than the red I originally used, but I think it still will look quite good. And what I'm doing with acrylic color, it's usually easier to go from a bright color to a darker color. So in my case, that means I will start with the yellow. Now either you can start with the pure yellow, or you can mix a little bit of white in there. And now I start on the left-hand side of my moon, and I will try to use my pencil line as a guideline, but if I paint outside of it, that's not a bad thing at all, because afterwards we're covering it up with a darker color. And so we don't have to be too careful to not making any mistakes. I really try to like use the pencil as a guideline. And you see I'm really like starting with this pure yellow on the right hand side of the moon. And now, or since I mixed some white in there, now I can kind of continue with the pure yellow. And take your time, no need to hurry. A bit like so. And let me just check for questions. Ah, very nice. Yeah, and Andrea, since I know that some of you probably have the starter pack, I thought I might change my colors a little bit also for the starter set, so it is really clear for you which color I'm using, and you can copy it right away if you want, but of course there's always a margin for your own decisions. It should be about your own decisions. If you don't want a moon like that, maybe some of you say that's a little bit cheesy. Maybe you want it even like in blue tones, like in a bright blue, or you want it in a gray tone. That's really up to you. It's really also up to you to make creative decisions now. So I'm continuing with my moon, And now slowly I want it to transfer into a more orange tone. So right now I'm still using a little bit of yellow here. And also you see here in this phase, the more color you use, the more you are going to cover up your structure of the moon. So if you want more structure to be visible, use a little bit less color, or also you can maybe mix in a little bit of water, because what that will do is that your color gets less opaque and you have a little bit more of that blue tone shining through the moon. And now it's time to mix in a little bit of red into my yellow. As you see, like I'm only dipping in a corner here. I'm starting really gentle. It's always very annoying if you use too much color and then you're somewhere where you don't want to be. So it's always easier to take a little bit and mix it in step by step. And if you've gone too far, of course, you can always add some yellow. And then let me try it out if it already blends in. Doesn't look that bad, I think. So I need a little bit more of that. And I'm really basically just continuing like that, and step by step I'm mixing in a little bit more of my red. And really try to, once you mixed in more, try to stay on that part, not to go here again, because if I will paint here now, of course I will have that color tone over here, which I don't necessarily want. Ooh, now I've taken a little bit too much, I think, so I need some more yellow. Maybe even a little bit more. And I think today I don't want to go too far into the red, so I'm really staying more in a orange. For my right hand side of the moon. And of course, I mean, the only difference is how much red you mix in the end. Maybe a little bit more red could do. Like so. Yeah, I like that. I think I will mix in a little bit of water. Since if you happen to notice that you have plenty of white pores, sort of pores that stay open, And if you want to cover them up, maybe you think, I like that as a structure, or maybe you want to cover them up with color, then you can mix in a little bit of water, because like that, your color will flow a little bit better and it will fill up those tiny white holes where the color has problems to sink in because of the structure of your canvas. That's not bad. A little bit more here. Yes. Really try to go until the edge where you see your pencil, because you don't want a white gap between the moon and your sky. Okay. And now if I take a look at my moon right now, what I'm not completely happy is that right here I have kind of a almost straight line where I have a transition from my yellow to an orange. So I kind of want this more to be in the form of my moon. So more like that. So what I'm going to do is I'm washing out my brush so I don't have any orange on there. And what I will do is I will take some pure yellow, and since I know if I look at my painting, since that part is still wet, I know if I mix in pure yellow, it will start blending automatically. Now, depending on how much time you used here for it, if your color is already dry, it won't blend in anymore. So that would mean that you still need to mix in a tiny little bit of red or use some water, because if you use some water, it should start dissolving the color you already laid down on your canvas again. And you see immediately, if I do that, this line starts disappearing and I have a more like even gradient of my moon. And of course, it doesn't need to be perfect since our moon has many craters and mountains and valleys. And also what I'm observing is I have a tiny white spot down here that I would like to fill in. Okay, I think that's not bad right now. And I hope so far you guys are all okay. You're still having fun. Your moon is in progression and you didn't punch any holes through the canvas. But if you're having troubles, don't worry about it. Maybe sometimes if you have troubles creating a beautiful gradients of the moon. Sometimes it's better to kind of step away from what you're doing right now if you're not happy with it, and leave it for a bit and then continue it later on. That's also really important with painting, because the problem is if you want to paint over something you don't like right away, if it's still wet and you apply new colors, the only thing that you're going to do is you're blending together those colors. But if you wait until it dries, you can easily paint over it with a new color. Okay, so I see the question that your brush started to lose some hair. That can happen sometime, especially if you have old brushes. I also know this phenomenon. Um, for me, there's sometimes two options. If you're still painting on that region, sometimes it's good to remove them immediately. Most of the time it's best to do that with a paper towel to kind of press it on. It should actually stick to your towel. The problem is, of course, with that you also create a little spot where you brush something away, so you kind of might have to repaint that little part. Or you can also wait until your painting is dry and remove them in the end. The problem there can be that they're already stuck to the painting, so you might have to remove them with a knife, and this is kind of like you have to work very fine, and it can be quite nerve-wracking. So if you decide either way. I mean, if it's easier for you to kind of do it afterwards, then do it then. I mean, the advantage is you don't have to repaint that part. But if you're working on that part right now and you still have enough color, might as well get rid of it right away. I hope I could answer your question. And I think by now you guys should be more or less finished with our moon. So next we can continue to our sky. And now for our sky, of course, first I'm washing my brush again, so I'm not painting an orange sky. And now for my sky, it's pretty basic what I need to do. Right now I have this bright blue and I have black. And I need to darken my bright blue, and you probably already know how that's done. First, this time I take quite a bit of color because I'm going to cover everything that is white right now with my dark blue. So I'm taking quite a bit of blue color, and I mean you can mix it in here or in here. I'm mixing it in here right now because this is still a little bit wet. I'm waiting this to dry, and also taking some black. And also here again, really go for the tone of color that you like. Don't go too dark, because you need to be able to make the trees that you're gonna add afterwards darker than that. So don't do it like all black. I mean, if you're really dark, of course you're gonna do the trees afterwards all black. But other than that, it's really like your personal preference. And so what I'm doing now is I'm starting to paint the whole of my canvas in that tone of color. And here, of course, it helps if you have a big brush. You can work a little faster, but you're probably gonna use a little bit more color as well. And I'm starting on this side because here I don't have to be too careful to paint into my mood. And I see like I already almost used up the color that I just mixed, so I have to mix some more. So really be careful that you mix enough color at first, because it's always harder to mix a tone again that you already used. But since I have another choice, I will kind of try it, and I can always change it, light it up, or make it a little bit darker. Right now I think that looks, it's a little bit too bright, so what I can do is take a little bit more black and I mean this tone of color, if you have slight changes in your painting, it's not a bad thing at all. You're not a printer that only uses one value of color. If you have slight differences in tone, that gives your painting more life and can be a very beautiful thing. And you see, like, once I come closer to the moon, I start being more gentle. First of all, I'm just kind of making a rudimentary outline around the moon. And try, or what I'm doing is I'm really using even brush stroke, basically from almost from top to bottom, bottom to top. So I really get an even separation of color. Or of course, if you want more in an impressionistic style, you can also like use your brush more chaotically, like so. Because you'll see all those tiny things, they will make a difference in the final result. If you work more like this, you'll have more like a chaotic and lively sky. If you do it like that, it's gonna be a little bit more harmonic. You have slightly less changes in tone. So I already ran out of blue, so I need to use some more. So let's mix that again. Okay, again, a little bit more black. Nice. And I'm really filling all the white spaces with my blue. And also think about that your painting has got sides. So if you want to paint them as well, this is a good opportunity to do it right now, especially if you want it to be in the same tone of color as your sky. I'm gonna skip that step so it can save a little bit time to give you my instructions and to help you guys out in case of any problems. Okay, so Regina, if you see lines in your blue that you noticed it quite well, that's probably because you're putting in water. If you look at how I paint right now, I'm not mixing in any water right now. The water I'm only using for washing out my brush. And if I wash my brush, I'm careful to rinse it out that I don't have excess water on my brush. Because right now I really want a blue that covers up everything. And if you mix in water, your colors will be less opaque and it will be harder to cover up everything. So maybe try to clean and dry out your brush and then change like the part where you're at. If you're really having problems here, you have to let it dry, maybe continue over here. And once this part dried because of the water, you can paint over it. If you guys still have problems, sometimes if you use your own colors, if they're not that of perfect quality, it can be a little hard to cover everything. So if you're still having problems that you see those kind of strokes or smears, probably best if you wait a little bit until it dries and then cover it with another layer of blue. I am really going to try to give you enough time for applying your blue, but of course also think about it. If it's not perfectly even down here, that's not as bad as up here, because down here you're actually going to cover it up again with your trees. So try to keep that in mind as well. Okay, so starts being full of color. Need to apply some more on the bottom. And another thing is, if you start getting the feeling that your brush starts kind of sticking to the canvas, that probably means that color is starting to dry on the brush. So since you don't want that, you don't want the color to get completely dry on your brush, that means it's time to wash out your brush. Because the acrylic color, when it's drying, it first gets a bit stickier and then it gets solid. So yeah, I'm washing out my brush. Doesn't have to be perfect since I'm still using the same tone of color, but as I said before, be careful to dry it off quite good so you don't have much water on the brush. And then I continue just like I did before. Exactly, yeah. You need to cover all your painting blue except of the moon. Very good. I mean, if you're short on blue, you can also decide to not cover that part if it's really that bad and do it later just with black. But it's always good to have like a layer of color which is underneath the color that you're going to apply for all your details and stuff. So I'm really painting the whole of my canvas except of the moon blue. I even need more blue. Let's take a little bit more for good measure. And also, like in your lower part, it doesn't need to be covered perfectly since you're painting over it. And in the end, if I just like have some white spots left, I can always, this time, I can also mix in a little bit of water just to making the color able to fill in those tiny little holes and gaps where the color has problems to kind of soak in and sink in. Okay, so now you see The only thing I basically left is the part around the moon and maybe some small corners. Some tiny holes which I can always fill in at a later moment. Maybe here. Well, I'm really having two super hot lamps in front of me. I'm starting to sweat already. This video technique. So now that I only have this small circle around the moon, which is left, here I'm starting with a smaller brush so I can work a little bit more precise to kind of fill in this blank space. And right now, since I'm not using my brush, I'm placing it into the water so it doesn't dry out, and I can use it for many painting sessions afterwards. And once again, I'm mixing some more color. This time I'm trying to be quite careful to get the right tone. But as I said, you can always tweak it afterwards if you're not happy with it. And so right now comes a little bit of the detail work, because what I need to do now is to fill in this blank space around my moon. And here I'm being careful to once again use my pencil line, which should still be visible, as a guideline for being able to create a round and good shaped moon. And you really see here, if you use the brush of your starter set with the square edge, you're really able to create very clear outlines. And also, like, if it's getting hard, you're also, of course, allowed to turn your canvas to make it easier. And I hope you don't mind if I do that. Maybe for the moment you won't see my entire painting, but once I'm finished, I will show it to you again. And here, careful to, or try to work gently, but if you make some tiny mistakes, you don't need to create a perfect round shape. You're not a machine. So you see, since I'm trying to work quite precise, I need to take the canvas a little bit closer, so I hope you don't see too much of my forehead and can still see what I'm painting. Almost done. Okay, let me check this out and move my head a little bit away. Sometimes if you do the detail work, you're working so close to your painting, so you kind of lose the view for the whole. So it's always good to kind of lay it down, maybe even take a step back, so I'm able to make out some differences in tone that I don't like, maybe. But for me personally, I think it doesn't look too bad. Maybe down here I've got a small corner. Cover that up a little bit more, maybe with some water. I only want those white spots to disappear, so I can use some water to let it sink in. Okay, I think that is quite alright at the moment. So I'm giving you a little bit more time to finish yours, and maybe give me a quick heads up if you're done, so we can continue all together. I can use the time for washing out my brushes. And you see right now, while I'm painting, I'm washing out my brushes just with water. But normally, with my brushes afterwards, like after painting, after I'm done, I wash them out with a little bit of soap or kitchen utility cleaner, and this will really like get out the excess color, and you can really like use a paper towel to check, because if you make your brush wet and you still create those blue parts or like any color parts, you know that your brush isn't clean yet. And also what I want to do right now is, when I look at my water, it's really blue and murky already. So maybe that's the case with your water as well. So I'm stepping away for a brief moment and I will change my water right now. And also take a sip myself. So see you in a brief moment, and I hope when I come back we can continue and you're all ready. Okay, I'm already back, and I didn't forget that I still have a mic on. Probably would have been quite funny if I went to toilet as well now and you could all hear me, but I could resist that temptation. Jokes aside, um, are you guys ready? I see some readies already. That's very good. And wash out my brushes a little bit more. You see, like my water is already blue again because before I wasn't able to wash it out completely. But since it's only a little bit, that's not a problem for me. Okay, so next up, we need to create some stars. So right now, what I'm doing is I'm covering up my moon again. I have a second plate here, so I can cover it up perfectly. If you have used a mug or a glass that you don't want some color on there, maybe just like take a paper towel. It doesn't have to be perfectly round. It doesn't have to cover the moon perfectly, because you can always move it, but we're gonna do that because right now we're gonna sprinkle on some stars, and we actually don't want the stars on our moon. So if we can cover it up somehow, that's awesome. And now taking my brush again, and what I need for my stars is actually some pure white. Oh, my white already started to dry. And my white shouldn't be, as it is now, like a toothpaste. It should be more like milk. So what I need to do is I need to mix in some water. I need to water it down. So I'm taking quite a bit of water this time. And you should really see, just like I showed in the beginning when you created the texture of the moon, it should almost start running away on your plate. If it's like that, then you should be good to go. And now what I'm doing is I'm taking my brush again and I'm holding it in my weak hand. So for me, it's the left hand. And with the right hand, what I'm doing is I'm tapping on my brush. And immediately you see, you start creating sprinkles on your painting. So those are my beautiful stars. And I'm hoping not to make any mess here, so it's always good if you have some paper, some newspaper around your canvas so you don't spread the color all over your furniture. And if it's not working as it is working with me, you might have too thick of color, or also like sometimes the color in your plate is fine, but if you look at your brush you really still have some thick clumps of color, so get rid of them, try it again, maybe water it down a little bit more, and then it should work out. And also you see you at first you mean it's completely random, but you actually have a lot of control. So if I tap harder, I create more sprinkles. If I tap softly, I create less. And if I hold it more away from my painting, they will spread more, but of course they will also spread like around a little bit more. So there's really some control that you can put into there. And also, if you happen to create a sprinkle that you don't like, maybe something really big, you can take your paper towel, press it on there, don't smear it, and your star should be less strong or should disappear completely. Another option is also, if it's still wet, you can take a little bit of water, dissolve it, and then press the paper towel on to remove the rest of it. So I think I'm happy with the amount of stars that I have, so I can remove my plate. And as I said, if you don't have a plate, just take a paper towel, lay it on there, and I mean, you can always like first do this half and then maybe do this half like that. You can always move it, so you don't need the same form for covering it up. Oh, I already painted on the table of my boss. I am sorry, but they're still removable. Very nice. Okay, so I think we have to continue. We have 50 more minutes. That should be fine according to my knowledge. So now what we are continuing with is actually our trees. So I think right now I will stick to my middle brush. Maybe I'll swap to the big brush if I feel like I can't create the surfaces that I want. So yeah, we're gonna start our trees, and I'm gonna do that with pure black, I think. You can all, if pure black is too dark for you, you can also, of course, mix in a little bit of blue. Maybe I'll also mix in a little bit of blue, but like, yeah, I really want something dark here for my trees. So something like that. And first of all, probably right now, the line you drew at the beginning with the pencil, you probably won't be able to see it anymore. So we kind of need to create that line again as a guideline that can help us. So first of all, I'm doing that. It doesn't have to be a beautiful or perfectly straight line. As I said, it's just a guideline. So you can really know where your trees start. And now you know, if you look at the painting in the middle, in this section, you have smaller trees which are more in the background. And now on the right hand side and the left hand side, we have our beautiful and happy little trees, just as Bob Ross would call them. And we are going to do them right now. But first of all, we're starting in the back. So here I have quite small trees, and how I'm going to make them is I start from my midline and I really just create brush strokes from the mid upwards, and as I'm going upwards, I'm sort of I'm sort of flicking my wrist upwards, so on the upper part they really start fading away. If you do a like really a flick of the wrist, you start creating this natural fade, and this will look like some trees who are far away. Like, you can also use the edge of the brush to kind of create those single lines. So they will really look like trees which are in a distance, like a forest line that is in a distance. Maybe I have a big one here. Yeah, nice. And now I'm coming to my trees in a front line. And since I'm painting, wow, I just forgot the English name. I'm painting Christmas trees. I just have to call them Christmas trees then. So they're always sort of like a very steep pyramid. So I am also going to do that. But how I'm going to do that, I really want like an irregular form. So for me, most of the time, it's easiest to decide like to go from top to bottom, because like that I can already decide where is the top part of my tree. And then what I'm doing is basically here I don't want too much color on my brush, and for the top I'm using my brush quite gently, and I start like from a center line and kind of go outwards a little bit and do these flicks again. And then maybe I create just a line and I repeat the same thing. Or what you can also, you really want like this irregular form where you have like some tips coming out, some branches. So I really like try to create by tapping and flicking, like from top to bottom. I try to create those irregular outlines that start getting bigger and bigger. And you'll see if you have not too much color on your brush, now you see it will get easier and easier for me because I have less and less color, so it's easier to create those irregular forms. You can really like start with pressure here and really like flick it outwards, and it will get easier and easier to create these irregular forms that your eye will really mistake them for a tree. Like so. Maybe if I'm not too happy here, I can add something more. And this step I will really repeat several times. I mean, if I'm already happy with it, with the form of my first tree, that's good. And I will move to my second happy little tree and really just repeat those steps. There, at first, there is a little bit of technique with this, but once you figured out the movement that you need, it's really easy to create a very natural looking tree. I'm repeating that over here. Right now, I first start on the ground because right now I have quite a lot of color, so I want to get rid of it. So here I think it's good to create more space, to create more depth, if at least some of the trees are standing in front of our moon. So I will at least 2 trees, I will like paint them over the moon. And you see, since they're smaller on this side, or I decided to make them smaller on this side, I'm being more gentle. I'm creating smaller surfaces. I'm not tapping as hard. I'm only tapping with the top of my brush. And it's also cool if you can still see some orange spots behind the trees. That will give it even more depth. Yeah, that looks good. Not bad. Oh, that tree is a little bit not perfectly straight, I see, but maybe there was a strong gust of wind. Maybe it's an old one that already has problems standing perfectly straight, has seen a lot of things. I mean, since that's really the beauty of it all, since we're mimicking nature, we don't want to create perfect straight lines. And once you have the hang of this technique, you get the hang of it, it starts getting really easy to create the whole forest in just minutes. But if you're not there just yet, don't worry about it. With every tree that you create, you will get a little bit better. I have one just kind of on the side here. I hope you can see all of it. That's a little bit better. There's some more branches over here. Okay. And now that I created my tree line, I will start filling in more black on my two corners. So I will sort of create like a circle and I will fill in more. So I have still a blue space in the middle and two black spaces on the left hand and right hand side. Right now I need a bit more black. Maybe again mix in a little bit of blue. And here I'm really like continuing it with a chaotic brush stroke, so I'm not like being very top to bottom as I painted my sky. I'm really like being a bit messy. I actually also like it if I create just like this sort of dust once I have not so much color on my brush, because we really want to create this dark surface where, or that gives you the impression that you cannot make out what is there. So really like parts that are in the dark where your fantasy needs to fill them up and which give you room for your creativity and for interpretation. And also like in the middle, right now I have hardly any color on my brush, but still a tiny bit. So what I'm doing is sort of pulling in some of my black color just to give it a little bit of a mist almost. You can also, down here, you can also mix in a little bit more blue if you want more variations in tone. It's really, again, question of your personal taste. Okay. Maybe I want to create like a rock over here, so my waterfall has to kind of float around that part. Let's try that. So you really see it's really open for your creativity. There is no wrong or right. And of course, as Bob Ross says, There's no mistakes, there's just happy little accidents. So if you're having problems with making the movement of the trees, maybe to kind of make it a little simpler for you, it's really like if you have this kind of brushes, you have like a thick part and a small part. So depending on how you hold it, you can work very precisely with a thin line, or if you press the whole surface down, you can make like a bigger line. And what I'm really doing is I start with a thin line up here, and then really I start like spreading it out. And once I come down, I press down more of my brush. Or to simplify it even more, what you can do it if you have troubles is you can sort of let me maybe take my plate to show it to you. You can sort of create this zigzag form. So you do something like that. This is really simplified now, but that's actually what I'm doing. I'm not, it's really like I start pressing down and then I'm flicking it out. I really over exaggerate my movement now. But this is really like you create this fade that will be mistaken for branches. So really like press down, make a swoosh sort of. And the less you want, the less you press. You just like use a tiny bit. I hope that helps you a little bit. But as I said, if you're not getting it perfect yet, don't worry. There's always a little bit of exercise, and you'll see that there will come a point where you get the hang of it. I'm sure about that. And every tree that you do will probably look a little bit better. So I think maybe give me a quick heads up again. How is your progress? Can we continue? Don't worry if it's not perfect yet. You can always work on the details even after the class. And of course, this video will be available on YouTube if you want to continue afterwards. And you really see how our painting is coming together. Our composition is there already. It's just about working in the details now to really give it a little bit more of atmosphere. So I hope you all hang on. And I will start now mixing my next color. And the color that I'm mixing now will be for the brighter parts of our trees. So what I need is kind of a light blue, or a light gray, which should be maybe a little bit lighter than the whole of your background. So once again, I'm mixing blue and black, and also this time I'll mix in some white. And of course, the more white you will put in, you can of course also just use white, but I think that will be kind of illogic since we have like a night time. The snow probably won't be like super white, but the more white you mix in, the more it will look like there's snow on the trees. So it's like, once again up to you to decide if you want that. Maybe a little bit more white. Yeah, that's fine. Okay, so right now we will once again go over our trees and basically with the same technique as before, only this time we will not cover up the whole trees, but what we will do is like certain points where you see they come outside a little bit. I mean, I have like one part that kind of bends in and then I have branches coming out here. So I'm looking for those parts, and here, and once again here, it's good if you don't have too much color on your brush. And so here what I will do is with a soft touch, especially at first if you have taken the color freshly, I will create those surfaces that are a little brighter. And also, you can also create those straight lines. And like that, it will really start appearing. I think I have it's a little bit too bright, so we'll mix in some more black to make it a little bit more grayish. So like that, we will start creating, and you see I really use like a slight touch. I don't want to really cover up all my black. I want to create some surfaces like that. You will really start having the impression that you have some parts of our trees which are more in the foreground, meaning the brighter parts, and some parts which are more in the background. And really deliberately I'm like doing it a little bit of here, leaving a gap where there's more black, doing it again, leaving a gap, doing it again, and really by having that sort of rhythm, I'm starting to create that feeling of depth, that feeling of parts of the trees are in the foreground and parts of the trees are in the background. And if you happen to overdo it at one point, don't worry about it. You can also, like, once you finished with that tone of color, you can always come back and add a little bit more black in the detail parts. So really, by once again, like starting in the middle and flicking down your brush, It's really an easy way to create really realistic looking trees. And down here, since I don't know what's happening exactly. Maybe there's some bushes here. Maybe there's more trees. I just create a few spots, and then it's okay. And also, if you want the stumps of your trees being visible, you can also like mix in some brighter color. You can also make it look more interesting. But then once again, that's a question of your personal preference. Just don't overdo it. But even if you overdo it, you can always overpaint them with blue, with your like blue or grayish tone, or of course as well with your black. Are you guys all right? And you see, like once I'm not having too much color on my brush, it actually starts to get easier to make that uneven pattern. It will look even more realistic. So it's always a little bit harder at first when you have the color freshly on your brush, but then it can get easier and easier. And once you really get the hang of it, or it was the case at least when I did it, once I got the hang of it, I didn't want to stop making those trees, and I really had to like tell myself to not overdo it. So I still have those dark spaces in between that will give my painting depth. And also here, you really work. I'm really just like continuing that pattern, and because you have those trees up here, your eye will take those for like a forest as well, just because you kind of gave this illusion on the top. Maybe put in a little bit more branches here, or a little bit more of the stem, I should say. It's not too bad. And as I said before, if there's something you don't like, it's very easy to take some black and to once again create the dark space and make it disappear immediately. And already we have our forest. Thank you, Luca. Would be happy if I see you here next time. And while I'm giving you some more time for finishing your trees, I will already prepare my next step. And herefore I will need some pure white. And this time I'm adding it to the plate, because here I don't actually have too much surface, because what we're gonna use now is either our wooden parts or our spatulas, if you have a spatula. Let me show it to the camera again. First, let me close those colors and wash my hands a little bit. And maybe one last time, give me a heads up if you're ready. Your Bob Ross painting is almost done. Just one last step, one last element to add. And then maybe soon I'll see plenty of YouTube videos of you guys with the Bob Ross wig and producing your own tutorials. Who knows? Okay, so for our last step, as I said, I have some pure white down here. This time I'm not watering it down. And I think first I will show it with the wooden thingy, and afterwards I'll try to show it with the spatula. And now the thing with that step is, once you get the hang of it, it might look quite easy, but first you need some practice. So if at first it doesn't work out how you want it, don't worry about it. Actually, for my original painting, I also had some time to figure it out how it works. But like what you're going to do is you take your spatula or your wooden thing, and what I'm doing is I'm taking an edge and I'm holding it into the white, like directly. So you see here, I have like the edge, which has now a white line on there. Don't overdo it. You shouldn't have like really something that looks like toothpaste on your toothbrush. Should be way less than that. But you still should see like some color stuck to it. And what we're going to do now is when we press our spatula on our painting, we're able to create the white line. And you'll see like if you press lightly, if not everything touches, your line will be very fine. And if you make it touch a little bit more, your line will get thicker, just as that one. So really like that. Once you get the hang of it, you start being able to control it a little bit. And so I'm starting all in the back, and I try to create like a thin line first, so I'm not pressing it down too hard. And once I come down, I can also like roll my spatula on there, and you will sort of create this irregular pattern. And once I used up my color, I can hold one edge into my white again and create more of those lines. And once you make a few of them, to the viewer, they will appear like they're the crowns of waves of a river, like that irregular structure that you're creating with the wooden piece will really appear in your eye like they're waves. So really by like creating those lines, what you can also do if you want a little bit more of the white surface, you can also like pull it a little bit. And just be careful to not like, I mean, there's the few mistakes that you can do. One is that you take way too much color on your spatula, so you paint everything white immediately here, and you create a big surface. And another thing that can happen is if you really mean you need to press it on your canvas, you don't need to press it. Like the first touch can be very light. And once, because it's always better to do a little and to make it thicker if you want it to be thicker, make it more bold afterwards. And also you see once you don't have like so much on your spatula, you can also really like start pulling it a little bit. So here it really appears like it's a river that has multiple step downs and it flows into your direction. And once I come to like the edge or what I want the edge to of my waterfall to be, here I kind of created this stone. So basically I want some water to flow down here and I want some water to flow down here. So once again, I'll do that. And here I really try to set the edge. Where does the drop start? And once again, I very lightly touch it, and this time I'm pulling it down a little bit. So I start with a light touch. I mean, maybe your wooden thing doesn't even like touch the canvas, but only the color that you have on your spatula. And then once I come down, I can touch a little bit more and like that create that mist. And like by doing that several times, I really start creating that impression of that waterfall. And of course, if that edge is too big for me, I can turn it around and take the smaller edge. For example, here, maybe I have some of the tree coming in front of it, so you can only see the water down here. And I start again with a very light touch. I mean, I only want the color to touch. And then once I really want that line of water running down, I can almost scratch it onto the canvas. And also by making a turn, you can like create the impression that the water flows into a certain direction. And now with the spatula, it's really just the same thing. I'm really like holding one edge into it, and I try to hold it in the camera so you can see it. So one edge of my spatula is white now, and then by either just like creating the line or scratching it down, you really start creating that impression of your waterfall. Oh, now I see I have slight change of light in my window, some shadows. I hope you can still see everything I'm doing. If you're having trouble here, that's just actually the sunlight coming out. So once again with the spatula, you can also like, if you have some color on here, you can very lightly use the spatula parallel to the canvas and like just with a very slight touch, you want the color to touch the canvas, not your spatula. You can like create those lines. And once you're happy with what you did, what you want to do right now is you want to create a little bit of mist down here. And since your water should still be, or your white should still be wet, you can use a little bit of blue. You can also mix in a little bit of white maybe. Don't take too much on the color on the brush. and also take maybe some white. Take some water and I start just like the lowest part. I start applying my mist that kind of rises from the bottom of the waterfall. I'm really just doing circles with my brush, and also I'm being careful not to like paint over the whole beautiful structures that I created. If you happen to really like a structure that you created before, don't paint over it. Would be very unfortunate if you change something that you liked to something that you don't like anymore. A bit like so, and just in case that you feel like you added too much of it, you can always take your towel and like dissolve it a little bit again, or like take a little bit of water, add it to the edge, and then dissolve it a little bit. Or of course, what you can also do is take some black and add it on the edge if you're really unhappy with what happens. And maybe after that step, you want to add once again a little bit of foamy stuff. So it's really easy to once again take a little bit more of white and add it like that. So I'm quite happy with how my Bob Ross turned out right now. I think there's the moment where I shouldn't add too much, because there's always the danger when you paint, there's always the danger if you already like something but you want to make it perfect, that you're doing something that you regret afterwards, and we really don't want that. So I think for my part, I will leave it to that. The only thing that I will, of course, add right now, and I hope everybody will add that once you're done, is you have to sign your painting. And since we have like a dark corner down here, it's actually a perfect occasion to sign down there. And depending on how important you think your signature is, you can make it white so you have a strong contrast, or you can make it like in some sort of gray so it's not that strong. I think I will opt for that version. But of course, you can also sign your painting on the side if you want your signature not to be as visible. And yeah, then you're done with your very Bob Ross inspired painting. And what for me is quite unfortunate, I can't see what you did, what you painted. I'm really wondering how you managed. And of course, also, if you want to ask any more questions, there's still time to do so. But if you want to show what you painted, you can actually send us our paintings at info@paintevents.ch, or you can put them on Instagram as well with the hashtag PaintEvents. I will also add this to the chat right now so you see it spelled out, and I would really love to see some of your creations. And other than that, I can only say thank you everybody for attending. I hope you had fun.